I spent 40 years afraid. Not afraid of anything real. Afraid of what might happen. Afraid of what hadn't happened yet. Afraid of losing what I hadn't even lost. And nobody knew. Because from the outside, I looked like a man of faith. I led. I provided. I showed up. But inside was a different story. Inside was a war I didn't even know I was losing. I want to tell you something I've never said out loud before. For most of my adult life, I woke up at 3 a.m. with my chest already tight. Before I opened my eyes, before I remembered what day it was, the weight was just there, like it had been waiting for me. I'd lie in the dark and the thoughts would start. The business could fail by Friday. My partner might be hiding something. The deal we were counting on might fall through. I'd run the numbers in my head, not to solve anything, but just to feel like I was doing something with the fear. I wasn't praying. I was rehearsing catastrophe. And then I'd get up, get dressed, drive to the office, and no one would ever know. Because here's what I told myself for 40 years. This was responsibility. This is what it meant to be a serious man, a careful man, a man who didn't let things slip through his fingers. I called the fear discernment. I called the anxiety vigilance. I called the sleepless nights, the racing thoughts, the constant mental checklist of everything that could go wrong. I called all of it wisdom. That was the lie. And it was a sophisticated one, because it wasn't dressed like a weakness. It was dressed like a virtue. I convinced myself that men who didn't worry like I did were naive, that they just hadn't seen what I'd seen, that my suffering was somehow proof of my depth. Meanwhile, I was disappearing. Not physically. I was present at every table, but something in me was always somewhere else, somewhere in the future, managing a disaster that hadn't arrived yet. The most dangerous prison is the one that looks exactly like a life. There's an image I can't get out of my head. My daughter. She must have been 7, maybe 8. She came running into the kitchen one Saturday morning. I remember the sound of her feet on the floor, holding something. A drawing, a bug she'd found, a rock that looked special to her. I don't know. I genuinely do not know what it was, because I wasn't there. My body was there, coffee in hand, standing by the counter. But my mind was already at a meeting that wouldn't happen until Monday. I was running through a conversation I needed to have with someone who owed us money. I was 3 days ahead of myself, living in a problem that hadn't even fully formed yet. She came to show me something. I don't remember what. I remember the fear. Fast forward. She's 34 now. We were sitting on her porch last spring. Nothing dramatic, no big argument, just quiet. And she said something that I haven't stopped thinking about since. She said, "Dad, you always seem scared to be alive." Just like that. Not angry, not accusing, almost gentle. Like she was saying something she'd been holding for a long time and had finally decided to set down. I repeated it back to her slowly. "You always seem scared to be alive." And something in my chest broke open, because she wasn't wrong. She had seen what I had spent 4 decades hiding, not just from the world, but from myself. I started doing the inventory then, not of what I'd lost, The business was still standing, my health was mostly intact, but of what I had failed to inhabit. The Saturday mornings I survived instead of lived. The dinners where I was present in body but absent in spirit. The moments she wanted to share with me that I let pass through my hands like water because I was too busy holding on to worry. Everything I had feared losing was still there. And what I hadn't been able to put a price on, that had gone quietly without a sound while I was looking the other way. I kept everything I was afraid to lose and lost everything I forgot to protect. I don't have a dramatic conversion moment to give you. I wish I did. It would make a better story. What I have is a Tuesday night, alone in the house, no words left to pray. My daughter's words were still sitting on my chest. I wasn't reaching for anything. I wasn't strong enough to reach. I just sat there, in the quiet, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't try to outthink the pain. And something shifted. Not loud, not sudden, just a crack of light under a door. I had read scripture my whole life, sat in church for decades, heard sermons about the mind, about taking thoughts captive, about the renewing of the mind. The Word says this plainly, that thoughts can be identified, challenged, and brought under authority. That we are not helpless passengers inside our own heads. But I had never actually done it. I had always asked God to do it for me. I would pray, Lord, take this anxiety away. And when it didn't leave, I assumed it was my cross to bear. I assumed the suffering was the point. I never understood that He had already given me the tools, and that using them required something from me. The first thing that changed was this. I started treating my thoughts like strangers, not like truth, not like my voice. When a thought arrived, the business is going to collapse, you're going to fail everyone who depends on you, I learned to step back from it, just slightly, enough to ask, is this true? Where did this come from? Does this sound like the voice of God? That question, that tiny, quiet question, was the first real breath I had taken in years. The physical relief was something I cannot fully explain, like putting down a bag you didn't know you'd been carrying. The second thing came harder. The Word says that authority is not passive. I had to learn to speak to the thoughts, out loud sometimes. In the early days, alone in my car or in the bedroom, I would say, no, this is not from God. I do not receive this. And I felt foolish, genuinely foolish. It felt theatrical and strange. But it was the first real act of war I had engaged in. In 4 decades of faith, it was the first time I had actually fought back, not just endured. The third thing is the one I want you to hear most clearly, because removing a thought is only half the work. The Scripture teaches that an empty house doesn't stay empty. If you push something out and don't put truth in its place, it comes back louder. I had always treated the Word like wall decoration, something that looked good in a frame. I started planning it differently, not as information but as replacement, not reciting but receiving. Every time a fear tried to take root, I fed the soil with something true, slowly, imperfectly, but real. I won't tell you I'm a different man. I'm still working on it. The thoughts still come. But they don't have the same authority over me they once did, because I finally stopped letting them move in without challenge. My daughter and I, were not fully repaired. I don't know if that's possible or even what it would look like. But a few weeks ago I sent her a message. Just that I had been thinking about that Saturday morning, that I couldn't remember what she wanted to show me, that I was sorry. She wrote back 3 words. I know, Dad. It wasn't forgiveness wrapped up neatly, but the door moved. I didn't change because I found the will to be stronger. I changed because I finally stopped resisting the Spirit of God, stopped asking Him to do for me what He had already equipped me to do. That surrender, laying down my pride, my self-sufficiency, my addiction to worry, that was the most courageous thing I have ever done. If you are where I was, I am not here to judge you. I am here because I know what it costs. I paid it for 40 years. You still have time to spend yours differently.